to log in. Just logged in slightly early to allow people to log in. We'll just wait a few moments before we get started on our webinar for today. I'll just type everyone a message just so it's there, just to let everyone know we're just waiting a few minutes before we kick off. Hope your day is going well. It's certainly nice and sunny up here in Auckland. Okay, look, I think we can make a start. We've got about 20 people in total with the participants and the people that are online on the panel. We should get hopefully another 10 to 20 log in. So firstly, I'd just like to say welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me or I haven't met, my name is Tony Mitchell and I am the chair of the RPMA. I'm very happy to be facilitating this webinar series, the final series of 2024 today. And we have for you a stellar lineup for our panelists, which will engage you with lots of conversation. As I said, this is our final session, but I am pleased to say we'll be back early 2025 to rerun new topics for our webinar series. Today is all about property management misconceptions, and we have two very experienced property managers, business owners, who are going to share their insights in a rather informal way. They will each share their views or thoughts on a misconception out there in the marketplace. They might have a bit of conversation back and forth. And look, I welcome the opportunity for any questions that you might have. So if there are any questions, pop them into the chat, and I will approach each of the panelists in due course. And our panelists for today, they both need no introduction, as they have been regular panelists, guests, presenters on our series this year. We have Ryan Weir, I think all the way at the minute from Napier. It's lovely and sunny down there, he told me. Ryan has got a very long history in property management. He is also the business owner, franchisor of Property Scouts New Zealand. So welcome, Ryan.
Thanks, Tony.
We
Good to be
also
here.
have Richard Horne. Richard Horne is also someone who needs no introduction. He emceed for us at our Property Managers Conference this year. You probably have seen him from that. He also is the business owner for Manage My Property. And Richard is on the council for the RPMA, as is Ryan also. And so look, gentlemen, without any further ado, I will open up this panel to start the conversation with the misconceptions. Who would like to go first?
I think Ryan would.
Okay, I'll kick things off. Look, everyone, I've got a bit of a misconception amongst property managers, and that is that a new tenant who moves into one of our properties and then pretty quickly gives us a long list of things that they want fixed. And the myth is that they're going to be a difficult tenant and they're going to be high maintenance because they've just moved in and already they're reporting sort of a laundry list of things. So I believe that's a bit of a misconception. So what I would say is put yourself in the tenant's shoes. They might have just paid a 4-week bond and 2 weeks rent in advance, which can easily be $3,000 or $4,000. and they might want to stay at the property for a long period of time, a number of years. So they want to get this property right and suitable for them. So it doesn't mean they're going to be difficult. Now, my mentor in property management, he gave me 2 pieces of advice when you encounter that situation. He would say to me, number 1, Ryan, you've got to expect this is going to happen when you place a tenant into a property. So when it happens, it's like, yep, I was expecting that. And it's not a surprise and it doesn't get you down. So it's all about your mindset. Expect that it's going to happen. The second piece of advice I got about this misconception was, when it happens, when you get presented with that list of issues, just knock it out of the park. Send the work orders out, let the tenant know, hey, thank you very much for sending that list. I want to get everything sorted so you enjoy the property. And you just knock it out of the park. Even though it takes a bit of time and effort, just smash it. And that will really impress your tenant and set you up for an awesome tenancy. So you've turned a negative into a positive. And hey, look, what's stopping you after all those little bits and pieces are sorted out, dropping that tenant a link to your review page and saying, hey, would you mind reviewing my service so other tenants know what to expect when they deal with me in my business? So that's my misconception number 1, or my first myth busted. Over to you, Richard.
I'll just add to that, Ryan. That is absolutely true from I guess what we've experienced, that tenants do line up with a big list, and it should be expected. So
it's a 90% of the time, don't you think?
90% of the time. It just shows how important it is to have that place looking really, really mint straight off before they move in. I have had some that have continued to be a pain in the butt though. But I do agree, you should turn it into a Google review. Richard, over to you.
Okay, morning all. I have a long list actually, because I've been doing this for some time, but I also see the value in everybody that's attending today. You'll get some ideas about how to counter some of the issues that pop up. But in dealing with owners, I've had some interesting experiences where one particularly would be an owner that thinks that they can turn up anytime they like at their rental because it's theirs. They say, look, I'm going to pop round and fix that sash window, or I'm going to pop round and do some planting. So I'm just going round tomorrow. I've quite often had that call or email saying we've got the weekend off and we're going to go around and paint the outside of the house. And they can't do that. And I've had a few owners over the years, quite a few actually, who've said to me, look, it's my place. So how I explain this to them is, I say, it's not your place anymore. You've signed a management authority with my company, so you've given me control of your property. Yes, I'm acting on your behalf, but I'm controlling your property, and I've now signed a tenancy agreement with my tenant, and they have control over the property. So you can't go and jump up into the loft to retrieve your old dining chairs at 11 o'clock on Friday morning because you happen to be passing. You actually have to give 48 hours notice and follow the rule book. So I think breaking this news to some owners can be a surprise to them. That's my myth. What do you think, guys?
Well, thanks, Richard. It reminds me of, one of my tenants phoning me and saying, Tony, the neighbour, the owner, is regularly popping around doing the gardening. It just so happens to be while we're having a shower. Can you do something about that? It certainly does happen. And yes, have experienced having to actually explain to the landlord themselves. So excellent point.
It more commonly happens, in my experience, Richard, when the owner used to occupy that property. They've got a bigger, more emotional attachment than if it was a investment property bought for that purpose. So something to be mindful of.
Just tacking on to the end of what you're saying, when we're talking to a potential new client, a new owner, and they say, well, what do you want from us as the owners? And I usually say to them, silence. What we want from you is your trust in our ability to do the job and look after the place properly. So, and you should go off to the beach or golfing or hang gliding or whatever lights your lamp.
Sweet. Well,
All
I'll take
right.
the
Back
next
to you,
one.
Ryan.
Yeah, no worries. So the next misconception I have is as follows: the tenant with a pet has moved out, and I can smell urine at the final inspection. This smell will definitely come out once I use my professional carpet cleaners. So look, I've been in this situation a couple of times recently. So what I've learned is that urine actually seeps through the carpet and goes into potentially your underlay, and then potentially through your underlay into the subfloor. And that's where, of course, regular carpet cleaning, no matter how good your professional carpet cleaners are, they don't have a wand that can solve that problem if it gets that bad. So there's a little bit of science behind it. What can actually happen, particularly if a tenant were to use a rug doctor, which are terrible, moisture from sort of cleaning using a rug doctor actually reactivates the urine salts, and that releases ammonia. Now, I know it's been a long time since you did chemistry at high school, Richard, but ammonia is that strong smelling gas that's created when urine breaks down, and it's what gives that sort of sharp, unpleasant urine smell. So that can be a problem for property managers, and the misconception is that, you know, sending a work order to your professional carpet cleaner is going to solve it. It's not always the case.
Yes, quite a confronting topic, Ryan, and very, very relevant. Again, there's one that I'm working through right now. The tenant's actually saying, but we never had a dog in that room. Think they did.
In the most severe cases, you've got to replace the underlay and replace the carpet. This happened at a personal rental property of mine the other day, and it was a $6,000 to replace all the carpet and the underlay, plus loss of time renting the property out.
And the tenant was covered under the insurance, I would assume, so they would have had a 500 excess, and the rest was taken by insurance.
Yep.
Okay.
$500 per room. Oh, yep. Yeah,
per room. So, and that's quite an important point. It's per room, not per.
That's right.
Per house.
Yeah, because the insurance companies treat each room as a separate incident.
That's right. Yep.
So that's several claims.
There were 5 excesses applied.
Wow.
Okay, Richard, back to you.
Okay, back to me. Well, so again, this is sort of talking to potential new clients where they quite often say, "Hey, you know, I'm happy for you to manage the property, but I'll take care of all the maintenance myself. My brother-in-law is a builder, does a bit of plumbing work and a little bit of electrical, so I'm going to save myself a fortune." And one of the things that we point out to potential new clients is that you're running a business here. The old "she'll be right" number 8 wire, good old Kiwi bloke mentality is being shoved out by the ever tightening rules that we all operate under. And so doing the maintenance yourself, yeah, if it's a loose screw on a handle or something, that's fine. But again, you can't go around at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. And the other side of it is tenants, and I've had this happen only a couple of times. But tenants who say, "Oh, there's a leaking tap, but I got the plumber in and I got it fixed myself, and here's the invoice." They think that that's how this works, that we're just a conduit to somebody else's bank balance. And that's not the case. Systems that we have now have tightened up on things like that, but you still get people that think that way. And that's me.
Indeed. And even if you tell them at the start of the tenancy, the owners and also the tenants, they forget. So like, it did remind me of the conference where we talked about artificial intelligence and directing owners and tenants to some sort of question system robot that can actually help guide them through the process as well as obviously the property manager continuing to reinforce it.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Brian.
Yeah, I've got a good one here. Oh, I think I do. So the misconception is this: I've tested a smoke alarm, therefore it's fully operational and it will work when it needs to. So a little bit of detail on that. When you press the button to test the smoke alarm, it only confirms that the alarm makes a noise. It doesn't test if the smoke sensor is actually working.
That's a good point.
To confirm if a smoke alarm will actually work in a fire, you need to actually test it with smoke. And that's what triggers the sensor. Any thoughts on that, Richard? Have you heard that before?
That is actually news to me, I'm ashamed to say. It's actually news to me. But yeah, I'm thinking back to when the smoke alarms became a legal requirement. And I remember we bought a big pole to test the smoke alarms. And now what you're saying makes complete sense. So how do you get round that other than use a service that services you?
There can be, well, you basically can mimic what the smoke alarm testing service does. And I believe they use a smoke can, a can containing smoke, funnily enough, to actually release some smoke near to the smoke alarm. If that alarm sounds off the back of that smoke, then you know that it's at the time going to work in the event of a fire.
You can't just light a cigarette and test it. No, you're absolutely
I know the
right,
job
Ryan.
can be stressful, but
you're
no need
absolutely
to be
right. The
smoking.
tester will come around. They will blow smoke through it, but they also need to blow clear air through it to clear it afterwards. So it's you know, this is why with the regulations it's so important for the testing to be done properly. And you know, the other misconceptions that both of you have talked about have been for the owners or for the tenants. This one's for the property managers. And we know that not everyone knows this and how important it is to be able to make sure that the smoke alarms are tested properly and recorded. Thank you.
Particularly cleaning of them too.
We just have a Mandy. Mandy's just said, yes, smoke cans. Apparently you can get them from the local fire station. As long as you're able to clear it as well. I think that's part of best practice to be able to let the air clear. Otherwise the smoke alarm could go off again. But yes, you still can do it yourself as long as it's done appropriately. Or you can pass that cost on to the owner and get it done professionally and have peace of mind.
Actually, I think that's a good case for connecting owners to a service like PCNZ or SATS, because a lot of owners think that you do just press the button and get the beep. And they also follow on misconception with the smoke alarms is that 10-year smoke alarms last 10 years, because they don't. They sit on a shelf for months and months and possibly years and years. You buy your 10 years doesn't start when you screw it to the ceiling. It starts when it leaves the factory.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Who are we back to now? Richard.
Oh, damn, we're back to me. Okay. When you're dealing with an owner who I think Ryan mentioned earlier on used to live there or used to manage it themselves, it can often get interesting. They'll have a team of their own personal tradespeople that they can call on to get jobs, and so or they'll nominate to us as their manager what electrician they'd like. They might have a really good electrician, but if I get in touch with this electrician as an unknown quantity and say, hi, I've got an electrical problem, can you be there today? He's probably not going to be there till Tuesday week because he's fully booked. And I can't nag him if he doesn't turn up because he's not my trades guy. He's my owner's trades guy. And so that relationship gets bypassed potentially. We've got a whole long list of tradespeople that we use all the time. And the good ones get repeat work and they don't overcharge because they'd miss out on a truckload of work. And usually, because electricians and plumbers are probably the most frequent tradespeople that we use, if I ring one of them at, well, what time is it now? 11:30. I could probably have him there just after lunch because he knows that we give him tons of work, or her tons of work. So a lot of people miss the relationship that we have with our tradespeople because it's our life's blood, having good tradespeople that are on call all the time. If you're a private landlord, you might not have that.
I think sometimes, just given some of the challenges you might have with an owner and their tradespeople or their mates, you almost have to walk them down the path to use that person and for it to blow up for them to then realise. great if you can convince them at the start. I agree. It hasn't always worked in my case, but I have pretty much got them back.
Yeah.
Thank
Nice.
you. Brian.
Yeah, so a misconception I've got here is that it's an assumption, a bit of a trap that property managers can fall into, and it's this. Tenants know how to run the property just like I do. So many tenants, especially ones from overseas, can be quite unfamiliar with standalone houses on your portfolio because apartments are more common where they come from, right? So they might be unfamiliar with heat pumps, ventilation systems, circuit breakers, isolation switches, ripple control switches, fireplaces. It can seem very foreign to your tenants. What about lawns? A lot of people haven't come from a situation where they had to maintain grass and garden beds and things like that. Another thing is a lot of the people coming into New Zealand might come from drier climates, and they don't realise how damp it can be in New Zealand. So they don't know how to minimise dampness, how to ventilate rooms, how to use a fan when they're cooking, how to avoid drying clothes inside. And it's that lack of knowledge that can kind of lead to mould and damage if it's not addressed. So one really cool thing you can do about that is at Property Scouts, we've got a single page. It's called the Damp Home Guide. And it really educates people on what dampness is and how to combat it. Not only do we give it to people when they sign up for their property with us, but we also take it out to our routine inspections during the sort of colder winter months, and we just leave it on the dining table. But to my point, there's another really good idea, and it's not my idea. One of the RPMA award winners, this is one of their strategies. She's actually got a booklet. She makes a dedicated booklet per property that she rents out. And it's kind of like an induction course in how to use the property. So the sorts of things, I've never seen one, but I'm guessing the sorts of things in that booklet would be like where the water shut-off valve is, where the isolation switch is, where the circuit breaker is, how to clean the filters to the heat pump. So that way, it's really accelerating the tenant's education on how to use this house, because at the end of the day, just because we know how to use houses and the properties that we rent out, we can't assume that the tenants have the same level of knowledge as us. So we've got to try and help them any way we can.
Excellent. I'm sure Richard's got all of that set up for all of his properties as well.
Oh, yes, and I too stole it from somebody else. It's called research.
Thank you, Brian. Richard, back to you.
Okay. I'm sort of a wee bit more focused on dealing with potential new clients. I think that I'm expecting that some of the people that are listening to us this morning are maybe relatively new to the industry, or certainly not as long in the tooth as I am. I have come across this many times over the years where you get a new client that they move out. It was their place. They've moved out, and they hand you the keys to the nice, clean, empty house ready for advertising and tenanting. And you get an owner who says, now we want to move all our furniture into the spare bedroom, and we'll just lock it, or into the basement, or under the house, or in the garage, or whatever. They want to put their stuff in the garage because they don't want to pay for storage. And yes, you can do that, but there is an insurance implication, because if you put all your stuff under the house, it is only covered by your insurance, I think generally for about 6 months. And let's face it, a tenant who's sitting in your house for 2 years has every opportunity every day to open up the garage and see what's in there, or jump into the basement and have a look at your stuff. So unless you don't mind losing all your stuff in a fire, or having your tenant nick all your stuff, don't do it, is what I would advise. I'd get you to advise your potential owner, because it can end in disaster. In fact, I've had a shed full of stuff that got covered in an interestingly hairy fuzz all over every surface, because they'd stored it in a damp shed out the back, and the tenant said, my stuff is ruined. How did this happen? And trying to put the blame first of all on us and then on the owner. So yeah, you want to take on, I would say, an empty house that doesn't have things in the attic that they want to retrieve.
the other implication of owners making that move to store stuff on site is it precludes the tenant from using that area for storage. So that's
Correct.
loss of an amenity, and that can affect the price that they get for the property. So they think they might be saving on storage, but they
Yeah.
haven't factored into account the opportunity cost of including storage in the rental property.
Yeah.
And what tenant wants an owner coming over all the time to access the storage?
Well, I've actually had a tenant ring me to tell me that somebody was climbing out of the attic into the hallway with a dining chair, and he said, "I'm the owner. I can do what I like."
Oh, lovely. That goes back to one of your first misconceptions.
Yeah, yeah, it was horrific.
It's my property. I can do what I like.
I can do what I like. Yes.
Certainly takes all types. Okay, look, we've got time for just one more misconception from each of you before we'll open up the floor to see if there's any other questions. I think, Ryan, it's your turn.
Sure. Myth to be busted is I'm renting out a brand new property, so it doesn't need a meth test. So a couple of things about that. A brand new property, theoretically, it'd be uncommon, but theoretically, it could still have meth contamination through the process of being built, etc. The other thing is, no matter what, a baseline test is crucial, and that's because if you don't have one, you can't actually comprehensively prove that contamination occurred during the tenancy, meaning you can't hold the tenant accountable, and also it may void the insurance. I've been through the policy wording for probably 5 of New Zealand's biggest insurance companies, and it all says it in black and white. You've got to have a test in between tenancies and at the start of the tenancy. So don't leave it to chance. You sometimes do get pushback from owner about this. Hey, it's a brand new property. Why do I need this? You just need to take a few minutes to explain to them why it's still very important to get a brand new property tested for meth.
Yeah, I think they say experience is something you get right after you just needed it. And the situation I've had recently is where the property has tested positive for meth, but when the owners moved out of their home and put the tenant in, and I didn't put them in, they didn't want to get a meth test. They now see the sense in that. The other thing I'd say is that if you do have get a meth test done, because you might have tenants in there for a long time, make sure you keep it somewhere, or the owners have got it, or you get it. Because I've also got a situation where we're scrambling with the lawyers who did the sale and purchase agreement to try and find the lease agreement, to try and find a meth test. And of course, this was from 2017. That's all stored off site, and the records can be challenging. So make sure you keep them on file. All right.
Also, just adding to that, if you can't convince your owner to get a meth test, what should you do? You should get a meth waiver signed. So it's there in black and white that you've given them all the advice and the guidance, but they've refused to get a meth test done. Get it recorded.
Indeed. Okay, Richard.
Oh, I'm getting tips from this as well. It's good. So last one is something that's always amused me in this game. Popular misconception, again with owners and tenants. I think you get somebody who'll ring up and go, "Look, I've got a 3-bedroom house in Karori. You must have tenants on your books that are looking. They would love this place." And it's like, no, we don't have a book. We don't have 5 people sitting on the sofa in the office waiting for us to go, "Your home in Karori is ready." It's always fascinated me that people think we have a long register of people they're presumably homeless and now waiting for the opportunity to rent from us. So there is no book, there is no list, unless anybody else can prove to me otherwise. I've tried it, and it's a waste of time.
It's because the rental market is far too fluid, isn't it, Richard? Unlike the real estate market, where people might have a journey of trying to find a home over a year, so you can build up a list.
True. So
okay,
but you don't need them all.
We've nearly hit half past on the mark. I thought we had a question there. Someone hit the hand up button by mistake, but that's okay. Let me know, people that are online, if you do have any questions. I had one lined up which Ryan just answered, which was around, because no one had spoken about meth and misconceptions with meth, so it was around that. Happy to see if there's any others.
While we wait for questions, another misconception around meth is that you'll choose such great tenants that, there's no risk of meth. Well, the fact of the matter is, even professional people can be recreational meth users. And I think that was evident in the papers 3 or 4 months ago when someone earning $750,000 a year in a very important healthcare job was found to be using meth.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Unbelievable.
So there's no way. Oh, sorry, Tony, off to you, mate.
There's no, yeah, look, there's no way of telling, of knowing. That's why test screening is so important. Here we go. We do have one. Thank you, Mandy. Much appreciated. How long do you think a Healthy Homes compliance report lasts for? Just interested in your opinion. So you don't have to be correct.
Can I have a go at that first, Richard?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, Richard, you better Google it just to get it right.
I believe that the statement that you include in your tenancy agreement needs to be accurate as at the day you're publishing that tenancy agreement, and that it lasts. The default position is that it lasts for the duration of the tenancy, unless one of the following things happens: a renewal or an extension of that tenancy, in which case you would need to update your statement when you publish those documents, or if something changes with the compliance of that property. So if something breaks down or it no longer achieves compliance, you obviously want to jump on that pretty quickly.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Richard, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Not specifically to that, but allied to that generally. Something that I've taught my team, and I emphasize this a lot, is as a property manager, we are all really badly paid lawyers. And I don't mean that facetiously. You have to know the rules inside and out. And Ryan's a good example in this session of knowing the ins and outs of what we do. We are all really badly paid lawyers. And anybody that asks for a discount for their services needs their head looking at, because you guys have all got the legal stuff in your head and your experience, and they don't. And yet they say, can you give me a couple of % off? So don't join the race to the bottom. Stick by it, or tell them to go somewhere else.
Thank you. And Ryan, just to add to your point, yeah, look, when you do the Healthy Homes, there's a significant chunk of that things do not change in the property. When you're talking about the window space, how far windows can open, yes, things might break. I think you're absolutely right. So the other things that, if a vent or fan or dampness or gaps for ventilation there. But when you're talking about insulation, that lasts a long time. But as a property manager, you're through there every 3 months. You should be keeping an eye on all those other things to make sure that they are up to spec. Because you're responsible to make sure that those Healthy Home standards are maintained. Yep.
There was a recent case where an Auckland Property Investors Association member was audited by MBIE or Tenancy Services, and they had issued a tenancy agreement with a 1-year-old compliance, Healthy Homes compliance statement, and they got told off for that. Whenever you issue your tenancy agreement, you can't rely on an old Healthy Homes compliance statement. It needs to be up to date.
Does that answer Mandy's question where it says, yeah?
I think Mandy's question was...
no, there's another one. There's another one. So do you get your expert to do an updated Healthy Homes inspection between each tenancy? I don't. You might have a tenancy every year. And you've done a Healthy Homes and you're making sure it's compliant. You do run the risk of being audited. I wouldn't be getting a Healthy Homes done every tenant.
You could probably notice anything that had passed previously but is now a fail, just with your eyes.
Okay, but not if it's insulation in the loft. One of the things we emphasize to our owners is when we do inspections, it is a visual inspection. We don't move furniture, we don't crawl under the house, and we don't go up in the loft, because we haven't done a ladder course. Thank you, health and safety. I thought I knew how to climb a ladder, but seemingly there's a professional and an amateur way to do it. But yeah, we don't go up into the loft. So, you would actually have to get an assessor to come out and redo it.
I must say I've been up in the loft a couple of times doing Healthy Homes.
You're still new to this, Tony.
No, I know. Okay, look, Dave McCarry's made a bit of a statement here, which is worth sharing. I'm recently qualified meth screener, and I spent a practical day within the social housing property managers area. They shared with me that tradesmen are smoking meth on site, and it's quite common in their world. That's
Wow.
obviously quite a risk to the property, and would lead to contamination as well. Something to watch out
It's
for.
everywhere.
Next on the list, Rebecca, you have a question here. What is our authority if tenants don't respond to tenancy renewal emails? Owner wants to clarify if they will re-sign, have chased them for 3 weeks now, and there's nothing from them, no emails, no texts. Are we able to assume they aren't re-signing and can begin advertising? Their lease ends in 5 weeks.
They haven't given notice.
Yeah.
I think I'd probably call round to the property after 5 o'clock to increase the likelihood of them being home and say, hey, what's going on? We've been trying to communicate with you guys. Can we have a discussion about the proposed renewal of your lease?
The other side of it, I had this happen last year. I've got an owner who's very particular about her townhouse that we look after. And we went to the tenant whose fixed term tenancy was coming to an end. And we said to the tenant, do you want to stay on? They said, yes. We said, so do you want to sign for another year? They said, no, we want a periodic tenancy. I went back to the owner and she said, you're not serving my needs for this. So you're not doing your job properly. And I said, yes, we are. That the tenant at the moment under the current legislation has the ability to stay on, but then a periodic tenancy. It's their choice, not yours. Interesting.
Another owner misconception.
It is a misconception, yes. So to answer Rebecca's a question, the lease is up in 5 weeks. Should I begin advertising? No.
Okay. So look, there's no more questions coming through. Thank you very much to those that actually put the questions through. Oh, no, we've got another, Rebecca, thank you. We've got just enough time, so we will go to the question. What is your stance on taking over a property with an existing tenancy agreement in place? Would you re-sign them to your business's tenancy agreement?
I can field that one. I'm in the process of doing that right now. It's almost like a negotiation from my perspective. I would visit with the tenant and say, look, your tenancy will not be affected by this. You can continue on with your current tenancy agreement. It doesn't really matter, but I'd prefer if you signed to one of our tenancy agreements. And I put the responsibility or the choice on their side of the table. And most people go, yeah, do whatever you need to do as long as we're okay.
I couldn't agree any more with that. You can't force the tenant to change onto a different tenancy agreement, but it is best practice to put them onto your tenancy agreement because then you know the terms and conditions. You're not flying blind.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
It's good for consistency.
Very good. Okay. So look, again, I think we've run out of the questions and we've provided good input there and good responses, panelists. So thank you very much. I'd just like to again thank these panelists, Ryan and also Richard, for appearing today and providing your insights on popular or common property management misconceptions. You've both got a wealth of experience. Thank you for sharing that with the attendees. And I'd like to wish everyone a happy end to the year. Hope you have a good holiday and look forward to kicking off, Richard, with your first webinar series starter in February, I believe, in 2025.
Well, I've got some doozies coming.
That's fantastic.
Watch this space.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.